Hey there guys, it's Metro and we're back. Feels like it's been a year since I made a video, but we're back today with kind of a little bit of, I don't know, not one that I would normally make, but something that's a couple things that have been on my mind for a while and some news type stuff that's happened as well recently. So in the last 2 weeks, there's been a few hot fixes, some changes to 5-man's, especially Cathedral, and also the way the Keystone system works week to week. So in this video, we're going to talk about 3 topics. We're going to talk about, number 1, the changes to Cathedral and the difficulty of it still. We're going to talk about also why it's actually difficult. That's going to be like kind of a little rant there. And then the second thing we're going to talk about is the actual Keystone change and why, how I feel about that. And then the third thing we're going to talk about is the state of Mythic Plus moving forward, and what I think the system could be better at, and what it could become in 8.0. So anyway, I'm happy to be back. It's been quite a while since I've had time to make a video. Next like major video I'll be making is the healer tier list. Going to be working on that this weekend. But for now, let's talk about this. So if you guys didn't see, they released kind of like a cryptic hotfix base. I don't know if I can't really remember the wording on it, but it was essentially like the Cathedral of Eternal Night. Various abilities have been reduced, like the damage has been reduced, or something like that. Like the consensus was it was made easier generally, and this is my first time doing it. So I did it last week, very early in the week, like it was like Tuesday afternoon, and I can't remember. I think it was like 13, maybe 14, and it went relatively well. But it was tyrannical, and it was a fucking slog. We had a lot of trouble with the last 2 bosses, and we did not upgrade the key, but I didn't care. I just needed a different key, because that's the thing that fucking sucks. We're going to talk about that in the third part of the discussion. But anyway, so yeah, I was able to beat it, and then like I think it was like the next day they nerfed it, quote unquote, nerfed it. So I hadn't done it since, and I was looking for keys all weekend, but there was never any. And I did that live as well. I think some of you guys saw me do that. There was never any, and I was kind of surprised by that. But regardless, this is my first time doing it, and honestly, I don't know what's changed. Now, of course, this isn't tyrannical. It's fortified again, so I'm not actually sure. It's hard to compare week to week because of the big differences in boss health and damage and stuff. So if anybody knows a little bit more specifically, or maybe I'm being an idiot, maybe Blizzard has actually explicitly said that. If that's the case, just tell me. I don't know. But regardless, I'm trying to figure out what's actually new and changed, essentially what's like been nerfed, and it's very difficult to do because this place has a lot of artificial difficulty. I'm going to talk about that as the main bulk of the discussion on Cathedral of Eternal Night, and why this dungeon fails as a dungeon for progression, like hard dungeons, and why I worry about the next dungeon. Now, I don't know, is it testable on the PTR yet? I really want to go and check it out, but I definitely might try to do another soloing video in there, especially since it's going to scale you down. It should be a lot more interesting. But regardless, I'm just not impressed by this dungeon. I'm really not, and it's difficult for a lot of reasons that aren't real. And a lot of people don't realize that. A lot of people think, oh my god, this dungeon, it's fucking impossible, don't ever do it. But it's just not true. The things that suck about this dungeon, for one, is right there, okay? Is the trash has these obnoxious mechanics. Every fucking thing that you fight in here that's not a boss has obnoxious mechanics. These bats, they do the fear, right? There's like 4 mini bosses for some fucking reason, right? I don't know. I guess they liked what happened in Vault of the Wardens too much. Like, it's just really weird to me. I don't really know why they did this with the dungeon, and I think they did it because they're like, oh well, now these mini bosses will be tough on fortified, and the main bosses will be tough on tyrannical. So it's always going to be difficult no matter what. I think that's the wrong approach. They're designing around the Keystone system. I mean, I have to believe that's why they're doing it, because otherwise I just can't discern a real reason to be adding trash with this many mechanics and then these big mini bosses that come with the trash a lot of the times. Like, it's very difficult not to pull some of these guys with the trash, whether it's that eye in the room before the big, the big dude with the sledgehammer. Like, it's not easy to pull them solo. Like, you have to be very coordinated to do it well. And that goes right into the next problem. So few people want to run this place that nobody ever learns how to do it. And you're going to see that in action in this video. So that's a major talking point of this video. If you watch this, it hasn't happened yet. But when we get to basically all the bosses, I'm running this with, you know, all 5 of these people from my guild. It's not a pug or anything like that. This is a 15. I had 15 here, so I said, let's go do it after raid, and we did it. And we complete it, but we do not come anywhere close to the timer. And I could tell right out of the gate we were going to struggle on that first mini boss when he turns and does his shadow crash and it kills 3 fucking people. It's like, I mean, you can't even blame them. I really can't be mad at them because this place is just, nobody fucking does it. Like these, I don't, you know, these guys that I'm doing it with, I'm not sure they've done it before. I really don't know if they have. Like it's so funny. It's to the point where I get to bosses and people are like, "What? So what's this boss do again?" You know what I mean? Like, meanwhile, I've done a Dark Heart Thicket like 67 times this expansion, maybe more like 167. You know, so I don't know. It's just really that's step one in badness, right? When you add a new dungeon like this, and it's got such complication to it, and it's added in the middle of an expansion, they basically made it harder than it needed to be for no reason, and that's part of it. You know what I'm trying to say here? Like, the expansion has been out for 8 months. They add a dungeon. It's harder now. No matter what, even if it's just a different dungeon and different mechanics and there's nothing inherently more difficult about it, it's going to be harder because less people are willing to do it. Less people are willing to do this key because they have less information about it, regardless of its difficulty. You know, in theory, it probably isn't even that much more difficult than, say, you know, Dark Heart Thicket or Halls of Valor. But everybody, and myself included, is so much more familiar with them. So much, infinitely more. Miles ahead. I know Dark Heart Thicket, Halls of Valor, you know, Black Rookhold. I know all these places like the back of my head. I could close them and I could see a giant amount of bats wiping us. I could see it. I could see it in my sleep when I dream. I could see the bats. They're covering my corpse and the big guys telling them to attack our healer. I could see it. But in this dungeon, you just don't really know what's going to happen a lot of the times. And it's very evident when you... I did this last week on my Paladin. And boy, is it evident when the tank is not in Discord or anything like that with you guys. It's fucking insane. I cannot, like, the dude had no idea what he was pulling. He was pulling all kinds of shit. Most people don't know what you can and can't skip here. In fact, if you do, you know, if you try to skip as much as you can here, there's actually, you know, there's a really nice mob count in here. It's not bad at all. But when I started doing this, I always overpulled. We pulled way too many packs. We, you know, all kinds of extra stuff, and you'd be way over count. So a lot of people just don't know that. Like this guy here, you know, his cast, that lumbering thing, it does a lot of damage, knocks you back or whatever. So you want to try to prevent it, right? And that's like, the people in my group, I was like, yo, make sure we get this stun. And they're like, whoa, stun what? You know what I mean? So it's like, and like I said, it's definitely not a knock on them. And any wipes here are indicative of that. Now I cut all the wipes out, but we're going to get to this first boss and we're going to wipe because, you know, all the ads come out. And this is, you know, just because I'm making presumptions here. I'm like, all right, guys, make sure you kill the ads. And they run over to the ads and die because the ad hits them and they get targeted. You know, they're targeted. It hits them and they die. And then they're like, wait, how do we kill ads as melee? It's like, oh, yeah, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I guess don't attack the one that's targeting you, but we got to stun them. Like, yeah, it's just like, I don't know. It's just a dungeon where there's so few people have done it. Even now, I mean, it's been out for how long? You know what I mean? When did 7.2 come out? Like 4 months ago now? So I don't know what to do about this. I really don't, because Blizzard's put themselves in a situation here where the next dungeon is going to be even worse, I'm sure. They're not just going to make a new dungeon without any mechanics. I know that for a fact. Whatever that new Seated the Triumvirate, I think it's called, whatever that dungeon is, that's going to be even harder. Guarantee it. Mark it down here. You heard it first. Hey there, guys. It's prediction. That place is going to be 10 times worse than this place. I can guarantee it. Because, first of all, the theme sounds ridiculous. Just looking at the theme of the dungeon and the bosses within it, it's like, dude, there's no way these bosses are going to be easy. There's no fucking way based on what they did here. So, yeah. I don't know. But anyway, if there was a wrap up, you know, like something to think about for this dungeon, you know, a TLDR, I guess. This dungeon is not actually that difficult. It's just complicated in a lot of ways. There's a lot of mechanics on trash. You know, there's a lot of things that you don't see in other dungeons that are happening regularly in this dungeon. It's relatively short. So a lot of this stuff happens back to back to back to back. Like, especially the last two bosses. You go boss to boss. That's pretty rare. Other than, you know, there's not a lot of dungeons that you go like that. There's really not. In WoW's history, there's not a lot of dungeons with almost no trash. And, you know, the trash that is in between there is basically just a fucking RP event. Like, it's just, you just kill the bats and then you're ready to fight the boss. So that's another thing that perceives that, like, the difficulty is perceived. There's no spacing in between the boss there, so you don't have time for CDs and lust and stuff like that to be back up. That's a big deal. That's a really big deal. Those last two bosses are the hardest part of the dungeon, at least in my opinion. I think everybody would agree with that by a wide margin, I would say. And you don't have, you know, you may not be able to have your CDs properly set. So when you're doing it fast, it becomes quite obvious. So like I said, we cut out wipes here, and then one time I accidentally AoE death gripped the fucking flowers, but one was on me. I thought we had killed it, so that was stupid. So we wiped to that. That was my fault. But regardless, you know, non-tyrannical, we lust and we just shit on the fucking boss, absolutely dominating this boss. So no problems there. But as you see, the flowers are kind of getting. I grip one in because it's on somebody else, and they're just kind of people are just kind of like walking around. Oh, there's a flower there. Should we go kill it? You know what I mean? So. And I feel like it's that way no matter what. You know, it's not just the guys I'm running with. They're great players, every one of them in this group especially. So I have no qualms about that. But yeah, I think in general, people just don't know the dungeon very, very well at all, if at all. And that's why it's so difficult. It's not even that difficult. Like, the bosses were definitely overtuned at one point. They made that change a while ago. Some of the bosses just had way too much fucking health. Like, I think it was the last boss as well. I think somebody made like a graphic on it. One of the bosses, I can't remember, I think it was the last boss, had like twice as much health as another boss in 5 mans. You know what I'm saying? As another similar boss. A boss without any, like, you know, like, they were similar paced, the phasing, there was no ads, all that stuff. Like, it's really insane. This place was just objectively harder at one point. But now it's to the point where they've nerfed it so many times. And like I said, I still don't even know what they nerfed in here. But people still don't know the fucking dungeon. You know what I mean? They could have nerfed it 1,000,000,000%. And we'd still be wiping here. We'd still miss the timer here. And it has nothing to do with the difficulty of the dungeon. It's just that these people have not done the fucking dungeon. And part of that is because it came out in the middle of an expansion, and part of that is because the place is so daunting, people make such a big deal about it. So yeah, there's a big problem there. But anyway, that's it. So if you have any insight on what they actually changed in here, I would very much appreciate it, because I don't mind this dungeon. I really don't, especially as a DK. I love, man, just being able to grip things in this dungeon is really tasty. It really is. So anyway, that's that. Now, the next thing I wanted to talk about, which apparently was covered in a hotfix that I just missed. I've been very busy coming off Sunday. I had to work all day Monday and Tuesday, so I basically didn't even know this was happening. But apparently, they made it so that the Keystones, and I think what I was told was that it was like another, you know, weird worded, like, so we're gonna make them easier, or something, like, you know, it didn't specifically say what they were doing. But long story short, what's happened here, and this is stupid as fuck, watch the mistake I make here, sorry, but so the change they made was that whatever you did last week, the prior week, you now get a key for 1 lower instead of, I believe, 4. I believe it was 4, because if I remember correctly, I used to do a 15 and then I would have an 11. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. But now, last week I did a 16, and I had a 15 today. I opened up the box, well, yesterday now. I opened up the box, and it was a 15. So that's fucking awesome. That was Cathedral 15, of course. It's my luck. I mean, that's how this works, and we're going to talk about that in a bit too. But so anyway, I'm very happy about that. I think that is a very nice change, a very comfortable change. But some people brought up that there's a pretty bad detriment here. So if you only have 1 lower than what you did before, that means that you're pretty much never doing keys anymore. And I'm not necessarily against that, because getting a 15 done has been a bit arduous, I have to admit. It's been arduous. It's not hard to get it done. It just takes a long time because of what we're going to talk about here shortly. But mostly, you know, because you have to actually get the fucking 15. And that's my least favorite thing about this system. It's actually getting the key you want is near impossible. So, and getting any key that's appropriate, that is 15, is just a nightmare sometimes. So yeah, that's a cool change. Like I said, I definitely think they are going to be, you know, essentially nerfing the availability of keys because now people are just going to start with the higher key, and, you know, especially like, I feel like it's just doomed like 7s. Like I don't know who the fuck's going to have a 7 anymore that would actually be trying to do it seriously. But what this tells me is if somebody's looking for something under a 10, they're probably shit. You know what I mean? And it's not always just bad player. It might just be in like a shitty alt that you haven't played, a character you haven't kept up on. I don't really know, but it's pretty serious. It's pretty serious because if you look at all these ads too. So that's what I'm saying. Like, so we're doing this trash, and people don't know to try to stun the little fucking treasure dude and kill the books. And I mean, they are killing them, but they're just getting off now because we're wiping. But I mean, that's more elementals than an Archmage in Warcraft 3, am I right? Boy, I've been playing Warcraft 3 a lot recently. I'm really fucking enjoying it. That'll be a topic for another video. But anyway, yeah, so the Keystone change, like I said, I think it's indirectly nerfing the availability of keys, and that's going to go right into the third thing that I wanted to talk about today, which is going to be the bulk of the discussion, the states of Mythic Plus and its potential and moving forward. Okay, so before I say a word on this topic, I would like to reiterate what I've said dozens of times before. 99% of Mythic Plus is, like, you know, amazing. My favorite content the game has ever had. And if you know me, I love fucking dungeons. It's the reason I played Classic. It's the reason I played TBC. It's the reason I wasted my time on private servers for so long. Because I had this savory, this juicy experience in 5-mans at some point in my life, and forever since, I've always loved them. I don't remember when it was, I don't know where it was, but all I've known for the last 10 years is that dungeons are one of my favorite things to do in any video game. Literally any game. There's times where I'm a little bit burned out on WoW. You know, I'm not really looking to do world quests all day. Rather maybe play some Breath of the Wild, a little bit of Final Fantasy Tactics, you know, like all these other games that I played over the last 10 years. But it's like people are doing challenge modes. I'm logging on, boys. People are doing Mythic Plus. Let's fucking rock. You know what I mean? I love it. I love them. I could do them all day. I could do them all day, every day. I never get fucking bored of it. But in the current climate of Mythic Plus, there are some things that do make it difficult. Now, in fairness, comparing it to challenge mode, the system was 10 times worse. The challenge mode system was essentially 0 reward, to the point where basically if I wanted to do challenge modes, I was doing them with people who had no idea what they were doing, because it was almost impossible to find groups doing them multiple times that weren't charging people for them for some fucking reason. I never understood that. I enjoyed doing them. I would do them around the clock. And I had a lot of really thankful people for that. A lot of people were really gracious and really happy that I was helping them. And it felt awesome. That's kind of like where this all started. I kind of like doing that, man. I kind of like helping people in 5-mans. I don't know. It's weird. But anyway, I love it. I love tanking 5-mans especially. I don't mind healing them. And in MoP, I really enjoyed DPSing them as well. But that was a different time. That was a time where gear scaled to you, right? Or to the dungeon at least. So I was able to get a survival hunter in MoP and then a BM hunter in WoD. And I was able to make them as good as possible. Like they were as good of geared as they possibly could be just from random gear. So yeah, it's kind of it's not really like that anymore. If I was to play a DPS in 5-mans, I'd have to put an incredible amount of effort in to compete. Like, frankly, I can do almost as much damage as a damage dealer on tanks, so I don't see a reason to play a DPS, you know what I mean? But that's a different story, so anyway, I enjoy dungeons. Long story short, that was what I tried to say. I should have said it in 5 words. I really like Mythic Plus, okay? But unfortunately, the way the Keystone system works is a great letdown to me. and I just don't like it at all. Now, I talked about this in a previous video, and somebody brought up that in Diablo, the actual system that people will refer to this as like stealing its concept from, the way it works is, I guess you get the key, essentially, like trying to keep it parallel. You get the key, and it's for a specific dungeon. And then the dungeon difficulty that you do within that dungeon is based on the highest that you've done. So, for example, like this Mythic plus score nonsense. This is a topic for another video right here. But that fucking nonsense at least keeps track of the highest you've done. So, say I've done a Cathedral 15. Well, next week, I get a key, and I get to choose which dungeon it is. And if I pick Cathedral, it's going to be one lower than the highest I did last week. And that would be 15. You understand that? Or I do halls, and the highest I did, was 13, something like that. So I think that's the way to do it. I'm probably misunderstanding exactly how that works, but I'm pretty sure that's what I want. Like, basically what I want is a system where I don't have to do a key that's random. I do not want to do what Blizzard tells me I have to do. And it's really unfun to do that. It almost makes pugging better, because that's part of why I've loved pugging so much, because I don't have to fuck around with worrying about the key. I can find the key that I want. I could choose which dungeon I want to do when I'm pugging, because people have the key, I do the key, and that's that. So I just don't really like how it works out as an individual. Now, I know it's not meant to be done as an individual. It's meant to be like, oh, well, you don't want to do this key, then go do somebody else's key. But it's not always that easy, especially when you have a limited time frame like I do. I play more than I say I do, but in reality, I don't have as much free time as I would like to have, especially for this game. So it would be very nice if I could get the fucking keys I wanted and get in and out. And that's another problem when we're talking about gearing, because, Morgrane's recently switched to Monk, Brewmaster, and he's talking about those facepalm relics, whatever, and they only come in certain dungeons. They don't exist in raids at all, which is ridiculous. I didn't even know that, but that's ridiculous. So, yeah, he's got to go do Eye of Azshara and shit like that, And in order to do that, he's got to have the key. And in order to get the key, you have to be a human being who plays the game enough to have the key. That's stupid. But regardless, what I'm trying to say is you have to have a player have the key. There's no way that you could choose to have the key. There's nothing you can do. You have to exploit a pug, essentially, or get lucky yourself. And I just don't like that. And that goes hand in hand with what I've been talking about this whole dungeon, or this whole video. We will get a key that nobody wants, and you just have to do it and get a different one, like this. Cathedral, nobody wants to do this place. The gear is not worth the effort. This and Karazhan are just objectively harder, regardless of what we talked about earlier. They are just more difficult. It's just a fact. Because they're new, they have more mechanics than every other dungeon, and it honestly feels like they're scaled up a little bit higher. Regardless of what Blizzard says, I just don't believe them. I really do feel like upper Kara bosses, this place's bosses, lower Kara trash, it's just more difficult. It's just got more health, more mechanics, and more damage than any other dungeon. I don't think that's an opinion, but maybe it is. I don't know. Regardless, when you get a dungeon like that, like say upper Kara on Tyrannical, it's like, we probably can't complete this. Like, it's to the point where if you're not super serious about some of these dungeons on Tyrannical, you may not be able to complete them. So what are the options? What has Blizzard afforded us the option of? D-level the key to like 10 and get a different one. That's basically the only choice. Like, if I got upper Kara 15 on Tyrannical, I'm not sure we could complete that last boss. That last boss is a nightmare on Tyrannical. Even the fucking shit on the ship. The lightning on the ship kills you if you run through it. So, yeah, I'm not in love with it, and I'm not in love with the system in general. And there's a couple things that need to change, no doubt. Like I said, they really need to try to get their dungeons in line in terms of mechanics and in terms of complication. That's probably not possible at this point because they just don't seem to understand that it's that important. So I'm sure that the next raid or the next 5-man is going to be even worse. But if they can't do that, then what needs to change immediately, which it won't, immediately, is they need to allow us to choose the dungeon we do. And I know that won't happen because it's contrary to what they've been doing the whole time, where, people used to, they used to get the key and then they would deplete it and do the key until they could 3-chest it so they could get, like the maximum loot from it. And that was an interesting idea. People would get like a high key and then intentionally not complete it until they knew they could 3-chest it and try to get the most loot out of that. And then you'd go back to the random shit. So I could tell they don't like that. They don't like people, you know, chain running Eye of Ajar for facepalm relics. But they did this. They did it. It's not us. We didn't put the facepalm relics on only raids. You know what I mean? So they did this. You know what I mean? And now there's an easy way to live with the consequences. Just change the goddamn key system. So it's not going to happen in 7.x. It's going to happen in 8.0, or 8.0 might actually just bring the end of Mythic Pluses. And I've been talking about this for a while too, and this is the last thing we're going to bring up. I think that this system is not going to go forward as is, because what they did here was basically, I just don't think it was successful for what they wanted. Now, like I said, I fucking love Mythic Plus. And that's another reason I think it's not going to go forward. Because I loved challenge mode, and they iterated on it in such a way that it was no longer the same as it was in MoP into WoD. And then they iterated upon it even greater and changed it into Mythic Plus, and now it's completely different than challenge mode. And I know a lot of people preferred the challenge mode situation, like how the gear scaled and all that. But this is just a better system to have player activity from. And do we wipe here? I don't know, but I don't think so. But regardless, yeah, here you go. So this is the hardest boss in the whole fucking place. Those portals are a pain. These Shiveras, they knock you back, so it makes it difficult to actually do the fight, and it's just a mess. But anyway, I would not be surprised whatsoever if the next expansion does not feature the Mythic Plus system. I would expect it to be like, you know, there would still be challenging dungeons. They would still do the same type of thing, but I think they're going to overhaul it in some way that it's going to be unrecognizable again. And maybe not in 8.0, but going at this rate, there's so many people complaining about it, and it's kind of like the breeding ground for the Titan Forge hate. People think like, oh, I gotta do I7 to get a facepalm relic to Titan Forge. You know what I mean? It's like, dude, just go do the hard shit. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I never get that, but regardless, the problems are there, and a lot of them are community problems. Like, they're not actually problems with this. Just watch this. Boom, dead. I don't know how that even happened. He wasn't even stood in it. Anyway, problems are community driven a lot. Not necessarily game driven, like they're not actually affecting gameplay as much as people think they are. It's just kind of like a mentality thing. But I would not be surprised at all. Now, one thing that I would like to do is see this system expanded into other things. Like the fact that like things get harder. Like basically, we talked about this a while ago, but Mythic Plus leveling. That's it. Long story short, it's a whole nother video I can make on this topic. When we get closer to 8.0, I will be making a video on what I want to see from leveling. But regardless, for now, I would not be opposed to seeing something like that, or even, even in other content, like maybe even older content. You could do like Mythic Plus time walking or something. I don't know, something like that. But it's a great concept because it adds infinite difficulty, and people don't seem to understand that. That's where it's better than challenge mode. There was nothing you could do to make challenge mode harder. You just do it better, do it faster. But with Mythic Plus, you could always make it more challenging. And, Harry said this. It was a point of clairvoyance for Harry. He's like, bruv, this place is hard, isn't it? And what he was trying to say was like, when you do the dungeon on lower difficulty, there's mechanics that you don't even realize are there. You know what I mean? Like, there's shit that you don't even know exists when you do it on even 10. But then when you do it on 15, it's like, yo, this place is no joke. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's shit that they take the time to put on mobs and bosses that are trivial to the point of ignorance. You don't even know they exist until you do it on really high keys. And I think that's got to be one of the smartest things Blizzard has ever done. Because this happens even in raids. Now, don't get me wrong. I do not want to see this system in raids. I think it would completely ruin progression. And I am not a fan of it. If they do it, I will be severely disappointed. But regardless, I think the tech here and the idea behind it is actually one of the smartest things they've ever done. People always say, or said at least, that the game was too easy, all of this nonsense. Regardless, true or not true, it doesn't even matter. You can't say it anymore. It's just objectively false now. because of the Mythic plus Keystone system. So thanks, Blizzard. You did one thing very fucking well with that, that's for sure. But anyway, thanks for watching, guys. If you have any questions, let me know. If you know anything about the Cathedral nerfs, please let me know. Otherwise, stay tuned for some streams on the weekend, and then eventually we'll be getting the healer tier list up in probably another week or two. So thanks for watching. See you guys later.